Some of the audio from this next piece comes from the documentary film, the amazing documentary film, Sin by Silence.
At the age of 16, Brenda Clubine met the man of her dreams in a bowling alley in Glendale, California.
He was smooth, he was charismatic, he was handsome.
His name was Robert, and he soon made Brenda his bride, although the wedding lacked a little romance.
Well, I had what you call a shotgun wedding. And by that I mean, one day Robert said, "Your bag's packed, so let's go, we're going to Vegas." I said, "What are we going to Vegas for?" And he said, "To get married."
There was no proposal, "Do you want to marry me?"
No, he never asked me, he told me. So we got to Vegas, and then when I got there, I was like, wow, look how pretty this place is. This is really pretty, the lights and everything. It was late at night. All I remember was it was some chapel named the Gretna Green Wedding Chapel in Las Vegas, Nevada, and that was it. That's all I can remember. Oh, and that my feet were killing me from the heels. I went home, and, married life began.
Brenda had a baby son, Joseph. She hoped she and Joe and Robert would become a happy family. But they didn't.
Everything got really weird really fast.
Robert turned violent. Profoundly, disturbingly violent. Brenda remembers the first time he beat her, when she got home from work one afternoon.
I weighed 88 pounds at the time. He picked me up in the air, threw me across the room. I hit the door jamb, broke my collarbone, went to call the police, and he yanked the phone off the wall. And I was crying, and he said, "You want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about."
In the next 6 months, the violence got worse and worse.
Well, it got to the point where he gave me a skull fracture. He blackened my eyes. He kicked me. He beat me. I lose all the skin on the side of my face. He stabbed me in the hand. Just my ribs broke. He punctured my lung. The violence just escalated worse and worse and worse. I had 42 police reports in a 6-month period. I went to court. I got a restraining order. I tried to do all the right things. I called the police. He'd violate the restraining order right and left. I literally left 11 times. Every single time I'd leave, he'd find me. He'd hunt me down like a dog. There was nowhere to go. I had no friends left. I had no family. I had a little baby to take care of. So the only thing that there was to do was to go back home. He kept telling me, "I'm going to kill you." I knew that at one point in time, there was going to be that one time that it was going to happen.
That what was going to happen?
That he was going to kill me. There was this look in his eye that you can't ever forget. You can't forget it.
But after a terrible beating that landed her in the intensive care unit with a broken skull, Brenda filed for a divorce. And to her enormous surprise, Robert agreed. He called her up to apologize. He said he wanted to sign the divorce papers as soon as possible.
He said, "Brenda, I'm sorry. I've been wrong this whole time. I get it. I really finally get it. All you want is out." I thought, God, he really means it. He does get it. He said, "Can I take you to dinner? I'll sign the papers." I said, "I'll tell you what. We'll meet in a public place, and you can sign the papers."
They met at Bob's Big Boy in Glendale.
He was like, so nice. "Oh, here. Come on, you sit here, and I'll sit over here." It was just eerie, just plain eerie. He was so nice.
But when they finished their dinner, things started to unravel.
I go, "So do you have the papers?" Because we were done eating. He goes, puts his hand in his pocket like this, and he goes, "I don't have them. I left them where I'm staying. Down the street at the Astro Motel." He said, "Brenda, it's only 3 doors down. Just ride with me in the car over there, and then I'll run up the stairs, and I'll get it, and then I'll take you back to Bob's." I thought about it, and I thought, I'll do anything for my divorce, no problem. Okay. Especially given the fact that he had been nice all evening. So we get there, And he goes, come on up for a minute. He goes, I know you like Pepsi. I got a couple Pepsis. I said, don't do anything stupid, Robert. I swear to God, I will call the cops. He goes, no, I promise you. I told you, Brenda. I understand. I told you.
So Brenda went upstairs and into his room in the Astro Motel.
So I get in the room and he immediately deadbolts the door. And he hit me several times. And the situation got very violent, very fast. You know, he was drinking. He goes, you know what? Give me your wedding rings. He said, because without them, they won't be able to identify your body tomorrow. And so the next thing I knew, I took the wine bottle and I swung it at the back of his head. I said, I'm going to hurt you like you've hurt me. Now, mind you, I'm still only 88 pounds. I pulled it back with both of my hands and I lunged forward and I hit him over the head with it. So I took off running, and I kept going, and I went home. And 2 days later, a sergeant was on the phone and said, I need to talk to you. And then they came by about 6 hours later and told me Robert was dead. I said, yeah, right. Sure he is. And he really was dead.
Brenda was arrested.
Yeah, they took me to the station. They questioned me. Eventually it came out that I had killed him, and then when they said why, I explained why. You know, I said that wasn't what I intended. All I was trying to do was knock his butt out so I could get out of there and get away from him. You know, I said he wasn't even dead when I left. And they said, well, he's dead now. I was like, oh my God, I did this. Me. And I wasn't sure I could survive it. It's not something that you can put into words to explain to somebody what that horrible, gut-wrenching feeling is, to know that no matter what the circumstances were, you were still responsible for taking somebody's life. Although, I'm not saying for a second that I didn't deserve to live, because I had just as much of a right as he did. It's just that I didn't intend for it to happen that way. You know, it's not like I decide, oh, well, today I'm just going to go kill my husband, you know. And suddenly I was facing a lifetime in prison.
Her lawyers tried to mount a battered women syndrome defense in court, arguing that her life was always in danger and that she acted in self-defense. But back then, battered women syndrome didn't exist in the court's eyes.
And all I can remember was my judge saying, Ms. Clubine, your case will not be the case to set a precedent in the state of California. We're not doing it. I was ultimately found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to prison for 16 years to life.
She reluctantly agreed to give her 2-year-old son up for adoption and braced herself for a lifetime in prison.
When I got to prison, you know, it was weird. It was a cold day in February. It was ugly. It was foggy. When the bus pulled into the Sally Port, there were no leaves on the trees, but they were full of crows. When I got there, I saw people like the Manson girls. And I thought, I don't belong here. They were drug users and they were mean, nasty people. And I just knew I was the only one in this entire world that had ever been abused and was in prison for killing their abuser. It was just me, and I was all by myself.
Then, Brenda's life was completely shattered. One day, in her cell, she was told she had a phone call. It was from her son's adopted mom. Joseph had been killed in a car accident.
When they told me, I fell out onto the floor, and I was taken to the infirmary, and ultimately I ended up having a nervous breakdown, and I ended up on suicide watch.
Then one day, drowning in depression and considering suicide, Brenda had a realization.
It suddenly hit me that I heard somebody else talking about being abused. I thought, what does she know? She's not me. She don't know my business. You know, she can't know. Really. She has no clue. But then I was hearing that she did have a clue. And I went, oh my God, it's not just me. And then I'd hear it from yet somebody else. I felt like I was hearing my own story reverberated back to me. So I started writing the prison officials to ask, what can I do?
Brenda started a kind of support group, Convicted Women Against Abuse. At first, the women just talked to each other.
I wanted them to first understand that they weren't alone. And number two, that they could heal from that. That didn't mean that's who they were. And so that was the best day of my life, next to the birth of my son. It was destined for me to end up in prison with a life sentence, to become the person I was always meant to be. And that is an advocate for domestic violence.
Then the women started talking to politicians and activists, and people started to research the incredibly high numbers of abused women convicted of murder. Brenda told her story at a legislative hearing. California state law was changed to allow expert testimony on the effects of battering at felony trials, and women in prison lined up to have their cases reheard. Brenda's work made national headlines, and then, one day, in her cell, Brenda got a letter.
I actually got a letter from my son, and he was alive.
Joseph's adopted parents had lied about him being killed in a car accident. And as a grown man, 25 years later, he heard about his mother's work in prison, and he sat down to write her a letter.
He just told me that, he was sorry he had waited so long, and that he was proud of me and who I was. It was my miracle.
Then, Brenda tried for a second miracle. After 19 women were released thanks to her work, it was Brenda's turn. She filed a writ of habeas corpus and walked back into the courtroom.
When I got to court that morning and I was sitting in the holding tank, I kept dry heaving because I was sick. I was so sick to my stomach. I was a nervous wreck. So the judge said, I'm amending the sentence in this case.
Pursuant to 1473.5, I'm modifying the judgment in this case, and I'm ordering her released forthwith.
She is to be released forthwith. Credit for time served, I heard. Good luck, ma'am.
Good luck to you, ma'am.
On October 22nd, 2008, I was released in a pair of tan cords, a gray hoodie sweatshirt that said Venice Beach, California. We all drove over to this fancy schmancy steak place over by my attorney's office, and they bought me this amazing dinner. I had garlic fries and garlic mashed potatoes and a filet mignon steak. It was cool.
Brenda Clubine knows there are lots of women out there still being abused. She runs a nonprofit for battered women called Every 9 Seconds. Many thanks to the film Sin by Silence for providing some of the audio for that story, and you can find them at sinbysilence.org. The story was produced by our own Anna Sussman.